Hello,
Good
everyone, and
evening.
welcome to Flavor Talk with the BBQ Pro Shop Factory team. I'm co-host Brian Neal, aka Mr. Freak of Smoke Freaks Barbecue.
And I'm Ann Neal, Ms. Freak, and together we are the tongues and testers of the BBQ Pro Shop Flavor Guide, the world's first seasonings decoder and online buying guide. And joining us is our partner in flavor going all the way back to 2019, Jeff Belmonte, owner of BBQ Pro Shop. What's up, Jeff?
Hey, everybody. Great to be back this beautiful summer.
Yep.
Almost there.
Summer's winding down, and it's time for us to step away from the grill for a minute and get into a discussion with our good friend Duce Raymond. Duce is the managing partner for Sweet Baby Ray's Event Group. He's also the creator of the incredible Duce's Wild Barbecue Sauces and Rubs lineup, and increasingly a big online personality who creates a ton of content aimed at teaching you how to become a barbecue boss. Hey, Duce.
Hey, guys. Oh, man, this is fun. Thanks so much for having me. I'm pretty sure this is like the first live show I've done like this, so I'm pretty excited.
Hey, man, we're all about running without a net here. It's just like being in the hospitality business or doing competition barbecue. Sometimes things go wrong. Hopefully, at the end of the day, it goes right. And all of the judges, aka the folks listening now or in the future, are going to have a good time.
I love it. So for everyone tuning in, we've got a really great conversation in mind with Duce. He has a great, inspiring story about what it's like to be growing up in a actual real barbecue family. We use that term a lot in the barbecue world, barbecue family. Duce is like totally legit. And also, creating and forging his own path and his own barbecue legacy. So for all of you listeners out there, this is going to be a great one. We really encourage you to post comments, questions in the comment field. There's a lot that we all can learn from Duce, so feel free to put those comments up. We'll put them on the screen and have that be part of our discussion.
Indeed. Well, let's start at the beginning, Duce, so folks can learn a bit about you, who you are, and where you come from. So how about you kick us off with the Duce Raymond origin story? Where did you grow up, and how did you end up being what I like to call the greater barbecue family?
Yes. Well, again, thanks, guys, for having me. My story is very cool in the barbecue world because my dad's the chef that created Sweet Baby Ray's. And I grew up in Wausau, Wisconsin, was born here in Park Ridge. Then shortly after my family moved up to Wisconsin, and during that time, when I was very young, is when my dad started to develop the sauce for Uncle Dave actually to enter into a barbecue competition. So back in the early 80s, there was a Mike Ryko Rib Fest, and Dave wanted to enter. He was having some friendly debate with the guys at work and wanted to enter into this rib competition. So he asked his big brother, my dad, who was a chef, to come up with a sauce for the ribs at the Rib Fest. So my dad came up with his own ideas, asked some of his chef buddies what they thought about it, and they actually created the sauce for the name Sweet Baby Ray's. They had that already planned out because that was a nickname Dave had gotten playing basketball on the west side of Chicago. He had a sweet baseline jump shot, and when he made that shot, they'd be like, "That's Sweet Baby Ray." So that's an honest to God true story. And so they entered the competition. They ended up winning second place out of over 700 contestants. If you can believe that, if anyone's been to the American Royal, there's like 500 or 600 contestants. I don't even know how they pulled off having 500 teams there. If you go back and look at some old YouTube footage, you can see it's just really funny to see the old 80 outfits and the makeshift smokers and stuff like that. But then, Uncle Dave decided to quit his job and start, figuring out that whole business on the Sweet Baby Ray side.
So when in the history of the world did this all go down? Like, when did the sauce get developed and go to market?
So they developed it in the early 80s. The year that they got second place was 1985. And then they just slowly started after that. And I think they incorporated in 1986. And honestly, I am still dumbfounded every time I think about them trying to figure out this business,
Yeah.
not having any experience, no internet, no mentors and stuff like that. And they went basically door to door uh, to butcher shops and small stores and stuff like that, and really just started to learn as they went. And they went a lot of years without making a lot of money. And in the early days, my dad wasn't necessarily involved that much. He created the sauce and he had some input and stuff like that, but it was really Dave and his business partner Mike O'Brien that took the leap and went on with the business. And so yeah, I mean, they basically, overtaking persistence is the main word I'll use, because they needed a lot of persistence to really keep that thing going, because they weren't promised anything. There was no big sales like there was at the end, and they were just working very hard to keep the business going. And it's a real American success story. They started with $2,000, barely a high school education, and a dream, and they really made it happen. And when at the end in the year 2000, they sold to Ken's Foods for the gross sales that year was $30 million. And
How big do you think that brand is now? Because I don't know if
off the record,
world,
because nobody else is listening, it's a $2.2 billion brand.
Wow, that's just absolutely bonkers. And
It's unbelievable when you think about all the sauce sold in America. 51% of that is Sweet Baby Ray's. That means it sells more than all the other sauces combined.
Yeah.
Sweet Baby Ray sells more. It's just our family doesn't own that sauce anymore, but I'm still very proud of it, and I get goosebumps every time I talk about it, because it's just such an unbelievable story that you could not. No one would write that story. It's so crazy.
So if Sweet Baby Ray's is a little more than half of the sauce sold in the U.S., I would venture to guess that other 49%, there's a fair amount of that has some Sweet Baby Ray's in it. Because I see people buying it. You can buy this stuff in 5-gallon buckets. I mean, I don't know. You can probably buy it in a shipping container if you want.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, even when my uncle still ran the business, they were selling it in totes, like to the U.S. Army and stuff like that, and big purchasers. Totes I can't remember. It's like 400 gallons or something like that.
When I was first getting into, my own barbecue journey, and I'd say the 80s, there was really only 3 sauces that I knew about. There was Casey Masterpiece, there was Bullseye, and there was Open Pit. And then in a very short order, it seemed like Sweet Baby Ray's burst onto the scene and, created its own section on the shelf. And it's just been crazy to see how many different variations there are now on the Sweet Baby Ray's brand.
Yeah.
I've heard this story a couple of times, Duce. It's funny you say goosebumps, because each time I hear this story, it truly, legitimately goosebumps, just a testament to the hard work and effort and determination and persistence, as you put it, in that time frame, like you said, without the socials and the internet and all this to get the word out. So, truly. So how did you get involved in the brand, and, how has that legacy influenced your own success and your own barbecue journey?
I mean, growing up in the family, it was always around. Whenever we would come down to Chicago, there would be, I remember vividly, like going down to Uncle Dave's house, and there'd be all these sauce packets, like the little 1-ounce pouches. And we would manually put stickers, Sweet Baby Ray stickers, on these pouches.
Wow.
Or there'd be times when I was up in Wisconsin that my mom would meet Uncle Dave like halfway, and we would get a delivery of sauce and bring it to some restaurant or something. So it was like, even in the early days growing up, it was still kind of part of the family. And I mean, I was very proud. And if I can't even hardly talk about my dad without getting emotional.
Yeah.
But he was so proud.
What was the R&D process like for him in developing that stuff? I mean, there wasn't a roadmap. There wasn't.
There was no roadmap. He was a true chef. I mean, he really liked to cook and make people happy with food. I wasn't around when he actually developed the recipe for Sweet Baby Ray's, but I can imagine, they did, trials and stuff like that. But, what Uncle Dave says is he really changed the flavor profile of barbecue in America with that sauce. And it's just, I mean, just kind of crazy to think about. And, and that's what I grew up on, of course, and that was barbecue to me, was having ribs cooked on a Weber grill, brushed with Sweet Baby Ray's. And you guys have seen those videos that I've done. And that's what truly reminds me of barbecue as a child, is those charcoaly ribs with Sweet Baby Ray's on them.
Yeah, it's a unique flavor that you really can't really reproduce without. I don't know if this is a hard question or an easy one, but what do you reckon makes people love Sweet Baby Ray's sauce so much?
It's kind of funny, because what makes Sweet Baby Ray's so good and appealing to people is what really traditional barbecue isn't. So why people like it is it's so thick and it's so sweet.
Yeah.
But if you get like a barbecue sauce at, down south somewhere, it's more thin, it's not as sweet, and not, so it's like not traditional. But that American flavor profile loves the sweet, and people don't have to do anything to it. They can take it right out of the bottle, brush it on, and it tastes delicious, so it's it's easy to use. You can use it just as a dipper, like tons of kids just like dipping French fries in it and stuff like that. So I think it's just the ease of use and the sweetness and thickness of it is what people like.
I also found that I remember when I went into the Jewel the first time, it wasn't open pit, and I thought I had found like gold. I'm like, oh my God, Sweet Baby Ray's, look at this. It was like one of those things where like, it's something besides craft and open pit. I found it, it was like the first craft barbecue sauce you could find on the shelf,
Yeah, and it's crazy to think of that as a craft barbecue sauce, just because it feels so macro now.
Now it does, but back then it was completely off,
And
what I found.
If you talk to Uncle Dave, and that's what they attribute to a lot of the growth for, is because people found it and they thought they had something so special, and then they wanted to tell people about it. And that's really what helped Sweet Baby Ray's in the early days, is people's like, you have to try this. This is something new. This is something different. And it's so good. And that's kind of what sparked some of that early growth in the beginning.
Well, I know it's hard for most anyone in barbecue to stop talking about Sweet Baby Ray's, but alas, we must, because this is about you, Duce, and I'd love to hear, about the early stages of your culinary career, because, right, Sweet Baby Ray's is a big part of your life, but
Sure.
It isn't your life. You've got your own life that's all about these
Yes.
other things. So how'd you get into culinary? Where'd you cut your teeth or sharpen your knives? I don't know what you say, but what'd that look like?
So growing up, my dad was in the restaurant business, and right when I was starting high school, he actually opened his first restaurant. And previous to that, though, he was at the Wausau Club in Wausau, Wisconsin. And this was kind of like a highfalutin type of place where like all the doctors and lawyers and all that stuff kind of belonged there. And then all their kids would have their weddings and parties and stuff like that at that club. So he was in the mix, in the who's who in Wausau. And he got approached by someone that was opening a country club and asked if he would take over the restaurant and the food service portion of this country club. And I was right around 14, 15 when that happened. And so I started working in restaurants as soon as I could work. 14 years old, I was washing dishes, coat check, working my way all the way through. I remember when I was like 16 or 17 years old, it was New Year's Eve. There was other events going on, and I had the lead spot in the kitchen running the line on New Year's Eve with a full dining room. And it was very intense. So I got like moved up through the ranks pretty quick, but make no mistake, it wasn't because I was the son of the owner. It was because he worked me hard and trained me and showed me how. I mean, my knife skills when I was 15 years old were better than everybody when I started culinary school when I was 20. I had better knife skills than anybody else there because I was trained by my dad. And I don't say that to be boastful. I'm just saying that I had to learn at a fast pace because my dad pushed me. And I remember working in those kitchens and scrubbing the hoods and just thinking like, this has got to be like the hardest job in the world. Like nobody's working as hard as me. Like, and that's not the case. But I remember having some of those thoughts at an early age and ended up actually not wanting to follow that career path for some of those reasons is it was really hard work. And when I graduated high school, I said, I'm going to go to community college. I'm going to figure something else out. I'm not going to be a chef. My dad's always working nights and weekends, and I want to figure something else out. And went to 1 year of college and decided that's definitely not for me. And then I moved out to Utah with some buddies. And, but when I moved out there, I had to get a job. And the only thing I knew is how to work in restaurants and really worked for a phenomenal woman chef out there we were right around Park City and worked for at a California cuisine restaurant and was awesome. It was a great experience. I learned so much. The food out there was so much different than like the Wisconsin supper club type food that I was so used to. And, we went to farmers market and bought fresh ingredients. We were having fish flown in from Hawaii. It was like a total different atmosphere. And I really excelled out there. I really enjoyed it. Really wanted to learn more. And so when I was out there, that's when 9/11 happened actually, and really kind of had that homesick feeling and wanted to get back home. So made that decision out there that I was going to go to culinary and pursue that career. So I was out there for 9 months, went back and I moved in with my uncle and went to Kendall College and commuted from Wooddale, where our restaurant is now, and that's where Dave lives, down to Evanston for 2 years. And I loved every minute of it. I mean, culinary school to me was fun. It had some of that kitchen vibes, the camaraderie and stuff like that. But it was around food. I excelled at it. It was easy for me to do well there. And it was a really good fit. And then,
I got to say, a lot of the people in my barbecue network are people like me. They come from other walks of life. They've learned to master fire management and they've got a few good recipes and know how to cook a piece of meat, but they're not culinary specialists. And I certainly don't consider myself that. I mean, I can cook almost any piece of protein and make it right. But in terms of the things you do, making it unique, making it mind-blowing, those are skills that I don't have. I cribbed from people like you to come up with great recipes. But I did in my youth get to spend a few years working in restaurants. I never got much higher than Expo back in there. But I do remember that it was a time of legendary wild experiences.
I definitely learned how to drink in those days too.
They work hard, they play hard, they party hard. And I'm just curious, what's one of the wildest stories you can remember from your early days in the business?
Boy, I can't say the wildest ones. Here's one that I always explain to people how I learned how to drink in the restaurant business. So in Wisconsin, there's always Friday fish fry. And we always were responsible for making the beer batter on Fridays. So I was like 16, 17 years old, and the older line cooks were like 19, 20 or something. They were like just finishing high school, and I was like just starting high school as I remember it. And so we made the batter once, and then like 20 minutes into the shift, we would be at the bar saying, we need more beer for beer batter. We're out of beer batter. and it would come in, I don't know if you guys know the 1 gallon Cambros with the green lids. So we would get it in that, and then it would be take it back to the cooler and drink from there as much as you possibly can, and then pass the bucket around. And then when it was gone, we were out of beer batter again. We had to go get it filled up. So that did serve me well in future years, but that's how I learned. There it is. Exactly. You need to fill that up with some Miller Lite or something.
I've got flour instead.
Did people ever complain that the beer battler was light on the beer?
Yeah.
Well, before we move on, I just want to mention to folks that indeed the Wausau Club was a big deal. It's no longer there as the restaurant, but that building is still there. It's a
Correct.
very famous building on the Registry of Historic Places. And in fact, I believe it's now the Museum of Modern Art up there in Wausau. Was just there last year and saw it and was just struck by the building, but I had no idea that was its legacy and that you were a part of it. So
when I was real young, when Bill Clinton was president, Hillary Clinton came to town, and we were like the official greeters of her, and she came, and I don't know what the whole situation, why she was there, but she came, she had dinner at the restaurant when my dad was running it, and our family got to greet her. We got a picture of that. I still remember that. Like it was pretty cool.
Well, before we get too far along, let's grab one of these questions from the audience. Nathan's wanting to know if you will give any hints about how turkey gets done for the holidays up there at SBR.
Oh, can we get an early idea of how does the turkey at Sweet Baby Ray's for the holidays? What is he trying to say there?
Well, I'd put this on it.
Yeah.
Sure.
He wants to know how I cook it? Is that what he's asking?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So we do turkey 3 different ways. So we do a traditional smoked turkey, and Ann is absolutely correct, is we use our poultry rub on the turkey. We keep them whole, and we roast it slow in the smoker for like 225 until it hits that, 165 internal temperature or so. And then we do a deep fried turkey that we take a whole turkey. The smaller turkey, the better, because we're going to deep fry it. So you don't want to go over that 12 or 13 pound range. Inject it with Cajun butter, rub it with our Cajun rub on the outside, and then deep fry it. And typically, all truth be told here, at that time of year, we're doing so much volume, we don't have like the 45 minutes or an hour to do. So we usually fry it for about 20 minutes to really get it crispy, and then finish those in the oven because we got so many that we have to do. And then we do a traditional herb roasted turkey where we make a herb compound butter, rub it all around the turkey, a little of our house blend seasoning, and roast that just like Grandma did in the oven. So we do 3 different ways.
I gotcha. Well, I really wasn't prepared to start thinking about the holidays, but here we are. We just did. So let me reel us back a little bit, because I think we need to talk about what is SBR Events and what you're doing there. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So at a high level, SBR Events Group is like the parent company to 3 different brands. One is Sweet Baby Ray's Catering and Restaurants. 2 is True Cuisine, which is our higher end catering company that we do a lot of weddings and corporate events for. And then 3rd is Duce's Wild Sauces and Rubs.
I gotcha. So are the 2 different food outfits in different locations, or are y'all sharing one facility?
We operate out of one location. It just really helps. It's kind of more of a marketing strategy than anything. And it took me kind of a few, more than a couple of headaches to kind of understand how to market those 2 different separate brands. But yeah, to put it simply, this is really what rang true to me, is if you're talking about brides, a fancy bride doesn't really want anything to do with Sweet Baby Ray's, and a Sweet Baby Ray's bride could really care less if you have a fancy brand. So it really makes sense to keep them separate that way, because it's actually 2 separate clientele. So we have Sweet Baby Ray's for everything from backyard barbecue picnics, graduation parties, anything you could think of around barbecue, fun and interactive. And then we have True Cuisine for, more of that traditional wedding. If you go and get a steak and a chicken and you're seeing the pasta appetizers and that type of thing, that's True Cuisine. And then Duce's Wild is rubs and sauces that you guys know, and eventually restaurants someday and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
We will get into those in a second, but before I forget, for SBR Events Group, what's the the service area, I guess, if you will, that people can order from you and that you work with? Where are you located?
So we're located in Wooddale, Illinois, and we really service the greater Chicagoland area. Most of our business is out in the northwest suburbs, but we're in the city all the time. We have major venues in the city that we cater at, and then we go down south a little bit too. So we're greater Chicagoland area for sure. Mostly central suburbs, northwest suburbs is where we focus most of our attention.
Gotcha. And for everyone listening, that is SBREvents.com. They've got a fantastic website that will make you drool. So I encourage you to check it out. And if being a bride is in your future, well, now you know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
So you're managing a culinary event group, kind of the legacy of the original family business. You're running a sauce and rub business out of there. And over the last couple of years, you found time to create a digital content brand that's teaching people the art of cooking great barbecue. Kind of sounds like a lot to me.
Well, that does sound like a lot. What is a typical week like, in your life with all of those different things happening?
I'll put all the caveat on that is that we have a fantastic team, especially in the event group for the catering companies. And it's taken some time to build up the management team and stuff like that, but that's really what has allowed me to do some of these other things that I'm working on now. But we have, I'll do a couple quick shout outs, but Rainey Anderson's our director of sales. She's been with our company for over 7 years. She manages 12 people in the sales department, the people that enter all the orders, the project managers, and all that. We have Elena, who actually lives in Texas, but she does all our HR and accounting. Also been with us for a number of years. I would not have gotten through COVID if it wasn't for Elena. She's amazing. Mm-hmm. Then we have Opie, who's our director of operations. He worked at Corky's Catering for like 15 years, and then they closed, and we brought him on our team 2 years ago, and he's been a game changer for me. Been really able to take a lot of the day-to-day questions off my plate. And then we have a new executive chef, Jason, who actually went to culinary school with me and my wife, Jason Hurling, and he's been just great too. He started in December. He kind of got thrown into the mix right in the busy season, but has done really, really well. So that is, having those team members has really been what has allowed me to do some of the other things that I'm focusing on now. But yeah, in a week, a day in the life, so to speak, a lot of what I do is, we have weekly meetings that we do with the management team. And then, you know what, I'm going to get in trouble because he's probably the only one listening, as I didn't mention Matt Capone is our marketing manager. And he's really been what has helped us succeed on the digital side of things. So Matt Capone is also another manager. Again, kind of keeps me on point with what we've got to do from a content strategy and calendar situation there to make sure we're doing everything that we want to be doing in the digital space. So
it sounds like you're not in the kitchen working a knife at least every day anymore.
No. Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I do is future planning and relationship building for sure. I mean, number one thing in off-premise catering is venue relationships. So I try to touch base with, if it's not the venue managers themselves or owners, it's the salesperson that is in charge of that venue, to see how we're doing and make sure if there's anything we can do better or how last weekend went or something like that. And it's a lot of what I do is trying to plan, future videos, what are we going to do next? And then it's, we're trying to get Duce's Wild off the ground from like a broader retail perspective. So that also takes up quite a bit of my time, as we're looking for a larger co-packer and trying to, see what the right move is there, because it's not, that's why it blows my mind how Dave was able to do it without an Uncle Dave and without all these tools that I have, because, it's challenging nonetheless.
Yeah, I bet. So
Duce, What keeps you motivated and inspired throughout all of this that's happening? I mean, you're a busy guy. Got a lot going on.
Yeah. I mean, one, I feel like I have big shoes to fill with my dad and my uncle. I'm just naturally motivated. I feel like I don't know. That's a good question because see, and it goes back, and this is a little personal, but I don't mind sharing it. So I had, a very problem with drugs and alcohol, and I've been sober now for 7 years, and I need to keep myself busy for one, to keep on going. And it's also, I feel like I have like, again, I don't want to sound like, not humble or something like that, but I feel like I have so much potential that if I don't take advantage of it, then I would be doing myself and my family a disservice. So,
Sure.
so I feel like very driven by that. I want to, set a legacy for myself as well and set up my kids and, um, for their future. And so I just have a lot of bigger goals and aspirations that way. And, I've been lucky that we struggled for a long time with Sweet Baby Ray's.
Mhm.
It was over 12 years of losing money and not being a successful business. And it's only been the last 3 or 4 years that we've really found, success in the catering and restaurant business, where we feel like we're on a great path now. And so I just want to keep that going. We struggled for a number of years.
We got
yeah, was there
a question here. Sorry. Got any pastrami? Because I know
We don't have pastrami all the time.
it's good.
That.
Got it.
Well, I'd like to then it sounds like you've been in this restaurant game for long enough that you've probably seen a lot of sea change. In fact, I mean, just thinking back to my youth, restaurants weren't the thing they were now. There was maybe one fancy restaurant in a mid-sized city, not 50. And, it was almost invariably going to be an Italian restaurant. Other than that, it was fast food and diners. That's what existed in the 70s and the 80s. And now it's just so different. So I'm curious, what are some of the biggest transformations that you've lived through in this space? And how did you adapt to those?
This isn't necessarily something that I'm expert on or because our restaurant hasn't changed that much in the last 15 years. But what I see in the market is kind of what you alluded to is these restaurants are it's not just about the food, it's about the whole experience. And the way the restaurants are designed, it's, thinking of the guest experience from the very second they walk through the door. They have it thought down to where they're going to take their selfie picture to post on Instagram. I mean, these new restaurants, if you see Chicago Magazine and look at like the best new restaurants in Chicago, they look absolutely unbelievable. Doesn't matter what the theme is, they've got it figured out. It looks beautiful. I think there's a lot more attention put on the whole ambiance and guest experience. And then I think having amazing food is almost like a given now. Like, you have to work hard at it and make sure it's there, but it's like people are expecting every bite to be I mean, it's almost like, the Instagram and TikTokification of everything are heightened because everybody makes everything online look so amazing. Like, you're just expecting it to be just this perfect bite every time. And I think the restaurants have, that to battle with because so they're, the bar's being raised, by what everybody's experiencing online.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And how about before we get into the sauces that you're making now and marketing, and we'll definitely spend some time there because in our audience, we've got at least 2 or 3 people that are out there making and marketing their own sauces. And I'm sure for everyone in that game, the Sweet Baby Ray's story is something that they know and a lot of folks emulate. They're out there knocking on doors too. But before we move on, just a little curiosity in what made you decide to get into the content creation game as a part of this business empire, and how does that fit into your broader business strategy?
I mean, the motivation to get content out there was really to build awareness for our brand, specifically the catering brand, because we always felt like it had so much more room to grow. Having the name Sweet Baby Ray's, being a catering company, we're not restricted to 4 walls where we cater up to, 8 events on a single day, 8 weddings on a single night we can do.
Wow.
And so we just felt like there was more room to grow with that. And especially at the time. Now, since I started, we've grown quite a bit. And I don't give all the credit to everything we've done online, but it certainly has a part in it. But yeah, the motivation was actually, I work out a lot in the morning, so I'm listening to podcasts or watching YouTube videos and stuff like that. And a lot of it had to do with Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he's a big online personality. He runs a media company, and I really took what he had to say to heart. And, it's about, getting the awareness out there on your brand. And the best way to do that is through social media and online. And, we took a portion of the PPP money that we got back and put it into some consulting with Gary's small business group called the Sasha Group. And he, put us on the right path. They gave us a blueprint. We had a full day of Zoom calls with him and his team. And that was really what kickstarted us on our kind of online content journey. And then we brought on a full-time content creator. I kind of went all in. I saw that there was potential there. And, something that I think reigns true is like, in order to do anything, it doesn't matter what you're selling, what you're marketing, anything, in order to do anything, you need attention. So the easiest way to get that attention is through social or digital media right now today. And that's just what it was. It used to be the radio, then it was the TV, now it's the cell phone. It's just the way it is.
Right.
Edward's right. It's working.
Yeah, and I'll follow up on that too. I've been carrying your brand for pretty much since the start. I remember us having lunch and sitting back and talking about it. And I said to you, I'm like, that's really what sells. There's magic to it. But I mean, with Malcolm and Heath and a lot of those guys out there, they work their butts off creating content, and it works. People really believe in it. And I'm starting to see a lot more of your product being sold as a result of it. I mean, we're selling a tremendous amount of your Alabama sauce. And it's in a direct correlation to when you started going online.
Yeah. We had just over the 4th of July, we posted a video of the Alabama chicken, just the full recipe. And just in that one day, we saw a slew of the recipe. We had like 3 million views in like a few day span. And we saw the sales directly correlated to it. And it doesn't happen like that all the time, but when it does, it's pretty cool to see.
Pretty cool.
Wow. Well, this being Flavor Talk, let's dig into all these incredible flavors that you're producing under that Duce's Wild brand. And unlike the catering stuff, anybody listening to the podcast tonight can absolutely order those up from Barbecue Pro Shop or check out the Duce's Wild site to find this stuff and use it at home to create your own culinary masterpieces. So, Ann, take it away.
Yeah, I would like to talk about how this part of your business came to be, the sauces and the rubs that we're so familiar with. So how did you get into the making of your own branded products, and how did that all come to be?
So from the very, very start, it was kind of like a challenge from Dave, like, your dad did this, what do you got, sort of thing. And
challenge from Uncle Dave. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was from the very, very start. And the very first sauce that I made was the mustard sauce, because I wanted to do something totally different,
Right.
that wasn't like Sweet Baby Ray's. And what's so cool about the mustard sauce to me is that it still has some of those familiar characteristics. So it's sweet, it's tangy, it's a little spicy, but it's mustard based instead of tomato based. There it is. Original mustard.
Yeah.
And then kind of moving forward, what carried it forward is like why I had so many sauces and rubs is because we wanted to enter into the NBBQA Awards of Excellence, and they had all these categories. So I had to come up with all these sauces, and it was kind of a silly reason to do it, but it was kind of motivating me, and it took a lot of research and online and tasting recipes and getting labels made. And my sister, she designed the logo for Duce Wild and helped design the labels. She's got a graphic design background, and you know, it's like all those steps that go into this whole process is like, there's a lot that goes into it. So, you know, by the time we were ready to like go to a co-packer, we already had put a lot of work into the brand.
Yeah. How many years were you out there selling it, you know, made in the kitchen at home before you were ready to move up to the co-packer stage?
So we didn't get our first official batch from the co-packer till like mid-COVID, like 2022 or something
No
like that.
kidding.
Yeah. We were making it all the way through until then. And it's just such a long process. And two, you need to justify, like, what are you going to do with 4,000 pounds of barbecue sauce? So you better have somewhere to put it. Now, I'll have, you know, one advantage that I have that not everybody else has is we use it in the catering business and we use it in the restaurant too. So I get it split up where I get retail bottles and by the gallon. And then the catering business and the restaurant can use some of that product. Like if you order brisket at Sweet Baby Ray's in Wooddale, it's got Duce's Wild Texas sauce on it. Same thing with the Alabama chicken. Obviously, it's got the Alabama sauce on it. The pork and the ribs, we still use traditional Sweet Baby Ray's for that. But yeah, so I had an advantage that way where we have another outlet for it, having the catering business and the restaurant to use some of that volume.
That's actually a theme that I'm starting to pick up in this business, that it's really, really tough starting out with your own sauce or rub because of those minimum quantities that a co-packer wants. And it seems like the smaller your quantities, the higher you're going to pay, the more you're going to pay to have that made. And all of a sudden there's no margin. You know, you
100% correct.
You cannot win trying to sell these things. So you've got that great edge with the restaurant. And just for anyone out there doing the stuff themselves, we've seen other folks who didn't have that kind of advantage. So one of the things they focused on was finding a restaurant partner or a volume partner who could use the stuff, because they needed that moat to be able to sell the limited quantities that you can do in retail when you're first starting out building that brand.
Yeah. It's a really tough hill to climb. There's for sure. And it's like, it's a challenge as well. It's like, because if you can go out and sell to some of these bigger retailers, like that's another advantage I feel like I have going out. I've already sold Jewel where I could get in there, but I'm not ready to because our price is so high still, where it's like, what's the point of going in to sell cases when there's barely any margin? You know, it takes a lot of work and a lot of tracking and all this stuff to go in. But, you know, having the story, the family legacy, and having Dave there with me, it's like, I feel like that's why Duce's Wild has a real chance, is because, you know, we'll be able to sell top to top. I feel like, you know, I'll be able to go to a Mariano's and a Jewel and explain the story and why we think we're a good fit and the experience that we have and everything like that. But you still have to get the sauce made at the right price. Otherwise it doesn't make sense, you know?
Yeah,
so, and then you kind of get to like a chicken and egg situation is what comes first, because I made all these sales, but I have an expensive sauce, or I try to get the sauce made before I make the sales. It's a tough situation for sure.
You I think you remember that your DQ glaze was a big part of our pork program in our KCBS competition days. And I think you shared that there was a particular ingredient there that, you know, led to some distinction with that particular product. And just, you know, curious about that, you know, distinctive ingredients when you're coming up with your formulas and things like that, in terms of, you know, margins and getting the volume and attracting an audience and all that.
That's a tough one. You know, DQ glaze was a special sauce, different from the other ones because it didn't fit any category. I made DQ glaze specifically for competition, because I did not want to buy Blues Hog anymore.
Right.
So that's why I made DQ Glaze. And, kind of took some cues from DQ Glaze. It's took some cues from Blues Hog. Blues Hog is thinner, but it's like really sweet. It's more of like a glaze, and it's got some unique flavors to it. So I looked up some copycat recipes online to see what some of those flavors were. And one of the flavors that came up was vanilla.
Mhm.
But what's different about ours is we use a really high grade vanilla bean paste. And then there's also that not everybody knows there's crushed red pepper and thyme. And those three flavors together just do something special. You could say it's a very unique flavor profile and really stands out.
Yeah,
For anyone who hasn't tried this stuff, I mean, when I first tasted it, it didn't feel like a barbecue product really at all to me. It's far more complex, but it lends itself really, really well to, I think, all kinds of things you're cooking. You can glaze a pork chop on the grill with it. Just make sure your temps aren't too hot, or you'll burn the stuff.
It's got a lot of sugar in the recipe.
But yeah, that the thyme, I think, is what really made it pop for me and kind of drew us to it as a wild, no pun intended, ingredient that we could throw into our pork program. And we struggled for years. I mean, we failed to win so many grand championships because our pork tanked, I don't know how many times. But then finally, I think you snuck us a bottle at a competition where you weren't in it for long, but you did great while you were there. And man, that product really turned it around for us.
Yeah, I don't know that when our pork started hitting, it was because we'd suddenly acquired these amazing, smoking skills or anything. I think our flavor game had been enhanced. And I think, you mentioned Blues Hog. I think we were putting to the judges something a little bit different, something a little unique that, was a great flavor experience and not what everybody else was turning in necessarily. Great product.
So we've got, at this point, you said, I think 8 different rubs or sauces rather, in the lineup. So what's that stable look like today, and what are the more popular ones?
So the main 4 that we're selling more retail, which is just a few stores right now, but this is what's being made at the co-packer, is the Alabama sauce. That's our top seller that Jeff was talking about. I mean, in the barbecue world, it's not completely unique, but in the broader audience of people buying barbecue sauce, it's extremely unique. There's only a few on the market, and I think we were in the game early enough to where we show up early on Amazon searches and stuff like that. And that's mainly how they find it, through Barbecue Pro Shop, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, Alabama is so much, it's completely different than any other type of barbecue sauce. It's a mayonnaise vinegar based sauce. It's got some horseradish, some lemon juice, garlic, onion, and fresh ground black pepper, a little cayenne pepper. So it's really specifically designed for poultry, chicken. And it's just, I call it the magic. So when you have a smoked chicken and then you put it back over direct heat and kind of crisp up the skin and just glaze it with the Alabama sauce right at the end, it's just the flavor bombs you get that drip down from the grill onto that chicken. It's special for sure. I really think people should try it if they haven't tried it already.
I like that sauce on anything. I mean, I'll put it on brisket, I'll put it on tater tots and French fries, and just
definitely potatoes.
Salad dressing. Really. Yeah.
That's another good use for it is I've modified it to put in potato salad dressing or coleslaw dressing or something like that. So it's got some other uses too. Yeah. And so the main 4 are the Alabama sauce, the mustard sauce we talked about, our competition sauce, which is basically my dad's recipe for Sweet Baby Ray's, plus honey, plus chipotle, and plus our barbecue rub. I mean, if you want to make it, I have a TikTok and I showed everybody exactly how I make it already, but that's really what it was, our Sweet Baby Ray's recipe, plus a few different ingredients to heighten the flavor profile. And then when we went to the co-packer, I didn't want any corn syrup in the recipe. So everything's made with a water sugar base. so they make their own syrup with water and sugar and no corn syrup. Because
Mhm.
I just feel like, personally, I don't have a problem with corn syrup. I just feel like that the general public has a negative connotation to it. And if we could say no high fructose corn syrup on our label, I think that's a bonus. So that's the other difference there. And then the final one of the 4 that's being made at the co-packer is our Texas sauce. And that's kind of like our spicy version. We don't call it spicy, but it's thinner than a traditional tomato-based barbecue sauce. And it's a little spicy. It's got some cumin, some chili powder, a little red pepper flake in it. And it's actually what Uncle Dave calls his favorite barbecue, my favorite barbecue sauce of the lineup. So
Nice.
I like that one. And I put that one on brisket, mainly not just because it's Texas, but I like the flavor profile with the beef that it goes well with.
So any other flavor developments in the works beyond the
so not right now. I think we, it's focused on, we have so many sauces as it is. I always wish I could go back and have less, but people always pick out what's like, well, I really like this. And so we got to keep it on, like the ghost chili mustard sauce that Brian was talking about.
Oh
we
my
got to talk more about this
Your
one.
biggest fan.
So I want to introduce the world that doesn't know about it to this sauce.
I want to say we made in 2016, I think. And it's kind of like when ghost chilies were really coming popular and people were talking about them. And, I always kind of like go on what's on trend and stuff like that. So there was a category, again, in the MBBQA thing, spicy mustard sauce. And I thought, ghost chilies are really cool. They're really in right now. And that one actually won an award for its label, not for the flavor of the sauce, but the label did win an award. So I was on track with that. But that year, the original mustard won first place. And that's really what got me, it's almost like a barbecue competition. The first time your name gets called, you're totally hooked. Then I was like on the sauce and rub competition track because like my name got called first place and I was, ready to go. But that ghost chili sauce, we were talking about it earlier, and it's not smoke your face off hot. It's not like super duper ghost chili spicy. It's got a really deep flavor profile. It does have some heat, but it's not going to burn you up.
Yeah, to me, really, all of your sauces I would categorize as craft barbecue sauces. There's nothing about them that seems like a big mega grocery store mass-produced brand, even though now I can buy it at Jewel.
Mm-hmm.
But this ghost sauce in particular, the ghost chili barbecue sauce, it's the one I fell in love with probably the most because, one, I'm a big fan of mustard. I mean, there's a lot of craft mustards that I've been getting into more and more. But once I'm at the end of the day, I'm a little lazy. And most mustard that's in the craft department, you got to use a knife to put it on something. This stuff I can pour on literally anything. And, I'm not a big hot dog eater, but if you've got a bottle of this stuff, I'll eat a whole pack of hot dogs. I think it's one of the most fantastic brat sauces out there. It's spectacular with brisket, in my opinion. What do you like to use it on?
I think you're right on the right track there. Those sausages and things like that. I think both the mustard sauce lend themselves very well to any sort of sausage. And that's what we put it on, the Texas sausage that we have at the restaurant and the catering business. Very, very tasty on.
Right on. Well, I'm pretty sure this must be one of the ones you're still making in the kitchen because mine has a handwritten expiration date.
Yeah, that's how you know. Now you know the secret.
Glad you mentioned that. I see that all the time. That's why they're on sale on our site right now.
Jeff, what are some of your most popular sellers of Duce's products?
I'd say the competition as far as the red sauces, and then the Alabama is the other one. And I'm starting to see and it's funny that you mentioned that TikTok video because I was starting to see a lot of people get the poultry rub and the Alabama at the same time, or getting multiple things of it.
If I'm getting multiple products at the same time, definitely those. Good stuff.
But your mustard it changed my mind about mustard sauces because it's not overly sweet and it's just so good.
Yeah, do Deuce have any idea of what's the origin of mustard sauces and barbecue? Does that come from a particular region, or how'd that come to
The
be a
best
thing?
I am aware of is that it comes from South Carolina, and it's along those same lines of why vinegar sauce was made without tomato, because tomatoes were thought to be poisonous. So, but in South Carolina, it wasn't just a vinegar sauce, it was more of a mustard-based sauce that became popularized down there.
I gotta back you up. I'd never heard that tomatoes were poisonous. Say more about that if you can.
Oh my gosh, you got to read a history book, guys. I'll get the years totally wrong, but at some point in American history, tomatoes were thought to be poisonous, and that's why in Eastern North Carolina, that their vinegar sauce is only vinegar and peppers, no tomatoes at all, for sure. I wrote a couple reports on it, but when I was in culinary school, that was like the one thing I focused on. Anytime there was like, you could pick what you wanted to write about or anything, it was always about barbecue or American barbecue history or something like that.
Well, I've got one last question on these flavors. Ann and Jeff may have a couple of more, but you've made that transition with some of these into the world of co-packing, and I'm wondering if you have any stories or tips for folks who are also in this game or trying to make their way into it about how you cross that chasm, because that's where I've seen a lot of brands really run into trouble. They had a great product and then they just couldn't scale it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a few different things to consider. One is, if you think you're at that level and you want to go to a co-packer, just understand on what their minimums are and how much product you're really going to have to move. That's number one. And then number two, however long you think it's going to take for them to perfect your recipe, triple that amount of time, because it took, honest to God, from the time I brought them the very first sample of the competition sauce to the time I had it signed, sealed, delivered at our doorstep, it was over 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they got the other ones quicker. I don't know why, but the competition sauce was a major pain in the butt. And I would thought that would have been the easiest one because it's the most traditional, if you will, type of barbecue sauce. But it took a long time. I was trying to do 4 at once. Now, if you only have 1 or 2, it's a little bit maybe easier of a process. But yeah, it took almost 2 years from start to finish with that.
Well, I'm guessing that number one, you had a recipe. Number two, you knew how to express the quantities in the way that a co-packer wants to see them, and not just a quarter cup of this and a half a cup of that.
Yeah, and everything, and no matter how you have your recipe, they're gonna have to translate it into their ways. And I didn't have it scaled the way they would want it, because they don't even start with ketchup. They start with tomato paste and water. You know, so it's like and everything's done by weight, and it's all ratios and everything like that. So the normal person would not know how to do that anyway. So they're going to have to take your recipe, do something to start, get it close based on previous recipes they've had done before, some of their own ideas or whatever. And then you have a starting point. Then you're like, no, it has to be sweeter, it has to be thicker, it has to be this, has to be that. It took a long time to get that competition sauce right.
Yeah.
So do you think it's about the techniques, the ratios, the individual ingredients they use? I mean, why is it so hard?
It's because it's totally different than, it almost doesn't matter what recipe you start with, because it's totally different ingredients that they're playing with. Like, their vinegars are different strengths than the vinegars we get at the store. Like I said, the ketchup thing, it's not ketchup. There's so many different ingredients in ketchup. When you really break it down, and they're starting off with straight tomato paste, water, and vinegar, and then I had through them the whole nother curveball that I didn't want any corn syrup in it too. And the way sugar and corn syrup plays a role in the mouthfeel, and there's a lot of different things that those things bring to the game besides just sweetness. The consistency, the mouthfeel, the texture, plays a big role. So then that was another curveball that we had.
All right. Well, I think the lesson for y'all out there wanting to make your own sauce and then be selling it at Jewel is don't think once you've got that recipe perfected on your stove with your Heinz ketchup and your Sweet Baby Ray's that you added in there, that you're going to be able to just go out and start selling that stuff, because that is not how it works.
That's step 1 of 100 is making it taste good in your house, and then it takes a lot of steps to get it to having the co-packer put in the bottle with the label. I mean, you wouldn't even believe the first batch that they delivered to me. One, it was way too smoky. There was no date printed on the bottle, and it was a complete disaster. I mean, and there's just like, what do you mean there's no use by date on it? Like, don't you just normally do that? Did I have to tell you that? And it just blew my mind. I mean, it just really, I mean, and these are things that just, I was lucky because it's not like I had a big order going out. I had it ordered, and then I was going to sell it from there and use it in the restaurant and sell online and sell to Jeff and stuff like that. But no, we had to send the whole order back, and it just took forever.
I may be tempting fate the way the settlers tempted fate eating tomatoes, but I'm really bad about use by dates on barbecue sauce because we've got 60 different kinds. You know, we're constantly getting new sauces, and honestly, most of them don't even get refrigerated. Now, yours get a special place in the fridge because I know I'm dealing with some handcrafted stuff here, but how much does it really matter for these barbecue sauces that are so vinegar based?
I don't think a lot. I mean, I literally have a bottle of barbecue sauce from 1987 in my basement, and it's not exploded. I don't think I would open it up and try it. It's like one of the original batches of Sweet Baby Ray's. So that's pushing what, 40 years almost?
A little bit, maybe a little.
I don't know if you can go that far.
No, but I'm saying is no, it does. There's so much sugar and salt and vinegar in those products that typically it's not going to go mad, especially if it's made in those production facilities under the sanitation guidelines and everything like that. It's really, not going to be an issue. They say to refrigerate Sweet Baby Ray's after you open it, but I'll tell you what, in the restaurants, it doesn't get refrigerated.
Nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's move on to the awesome stuff that you're doing in the digital realm, which has already netted you something like 500,000 followers across all your different channels.
So Matt just added it up because we have like a little deck for Duce's Wild. So we put it all together with TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and there's a couple on LinkedIn. It was 635,000 across all the platforms.
Wow. And here I thought we were somebody about to break 5 figures after all these years, man. You're just crashing through.
We really got lucky with TikTok. I mean, that's where we have the most, and we hit it right. We got in right before everybody was on, and we had a couple videos pop off right away, and we have almost 400,000 just on TikTok. We just broke 100,000 followers on Instagram, which I was super stoked about. Just yesterday, so that was really fun.
Congratulations. And Duce, you have such great content, and I know your goal is to help the people become a barbecue boss.
Absolutely.
Mystifying techniques and tips and sharing experiences and demonstrations, and the video content that you put out across all your platforms is truly inspiring. And I know we're getting at time. I just am kind of curious, how do you come up with those ideas to focus on? There's so many things you could be doing in your videos, and what's your roadmap look like, and how do you design that roadmap?
I really tried to bring stuff that people can use at their house or at the restaurant or catering business too. There's some stuff I do, like those pork nuggets, that I just think like everyone talks about pork belly burnt to ends, but it's actually a better way to do it with the pork shoulder, in my opinion. And it's something we actually do all the time. So it's just things like that I think people would like to know that. And some of the stuff like, where's the money muscle? When I started competition, nobody would tell you where the money muscle was.
Yeah.
I had to like,
God, I know.
I had to figure this out. And I can't remember who was the first one that actually showed me. I think it was Mark Lambert. And, but it was, demystifying this stuff that doesn't have to be. And then like after it was the money muscle, then it's like,
Where's the
bacon? Where's the bacon?
Bacon.
And
Yeah.
so all that type of stuff I love showing on camera because I just want to get the information out there. And that's the one thing we focus on, where we're not ramming Sweet Baby Ray's and Duce's Wild down your throat. Yeah, I'm going to show that I'm using Duce's Wild sauce, but I'm not like telling you to go buy it every time I'm using it. But the main point is trying to give people information that they can use at their house to make them a better cook. And, like we say, make them a barbecue boss.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Love it. And what you said about where's the money muscle, where's the bacon? And you had Mark Lambert. For me, I had John Bovinette from Steamboat Barbecue, who was kind of my pork guru. And just, I don't know, last Memphis in May, or maybe it was Murfreesboro. I'm getting it all mixed up, but there was a question about, we've got some pork steaks here. Who wants to go study the anatomy of the pork shoulder cut into steaks? And nobody cared except me.
Yeah.
John. And I'm like, I'm in, let's do it. And we're just studying these, pork steaks. He's like, all right, here's where you find the bacon. You take your shoulder, you find the bone, you move your finger down, and there's your bacon right there. And every single time, like, mind blown.
Circles a tube.
Yep. It's really cool when you see that cross section. You can see all the different muscles.
Totally. That cross section on the pork steak. Cool.
Do people recognize you out in public now that you're TikTok famous?
Yeah, I mean, definitely way more than it used to be. I mean, I'll be at Jewel and people will say, "Oh, I've seen your video." Yeah, I get it quite often. Not all the time or anything, but yeah, definitely people notice me and say they like the videos and stuff like that. So that's always kind of cool. TikTok famous at times.
There you go. So speaking of TikTok famous, when you put yourself out there on all these digital platforms and you've amassed such a huge following as you are, there's going to be the naysayers and the trolls and the haters. And
without a doubt,
how do you deal with that? And what's the craziest thing you've ever heard?
So, I mean, I tried to ignore the negative stuff. I mean, I just take it with a grain of salt. That is part of the game. I take advice from Joe Rogan. He just says, dude, stay out of the comments. You have no business going in there, So I try to take that advice. Although I do like to go in the comments so I can answer some questions. Sometimes it's just way too much that you can't get through it all. But I do try to answer some questions if I can. But pretty much I just try to ignore the negative ones. I hear people say, "Oh, this guy should never cook barbecue again," or "Why does he sound like Kermit the Frog?" I don't know why, but people feel like I sound like Kermit the Frog, and there's like people are making memes about it, and it's pretty hilarious. So
that's probably a good thing.
I'll take it.
Memeing you, you're on your way.
I'll take it. I'll take it with a grain of salt and take it as a compliment. But yeah, I just try to ignore the negative ones. That's the only thing you can do, because I'm a couple times I was this close to type it back. I was like, I'm going to show this guy, and I'm like, nope, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah,
so
good for you.
I just never did, and I just have to stay that way.
That's good advice, to have some restraint.
Yeah,
everybody's the keyboard warrior, these days.
Oh yeah, and all we're trying to do is help people. And if you don't like the way I do it, then fine, don't do it that way. Because if you ask 10 people how to make burnt ends, you're going to get 10 different answers.
Different ways.
If you don't like the way, I even do it sometimes differently. You know what I mean? Just depending on how it is and what the timeline is and stuff like that. So, I think it's all what we're doing is trying to make people's barbecue experience better. And, hopefully we're doing that.
Yeah, I think you absolutely are. In fact, I'll say one of my earliest lessons in the barbecue world was anybody who's trying to tell you that there's only one right way to do something in barbecue, that's a guy who doesn't know much about barbecue.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That sounds
Indeed.
true.
Well, we can't forget to drop some of these handles on people so folks know where to find you. Where do they get you on the socials?
So at Sweet Baby Ray's Catering across all platforms. And then I'm Duce Raymond on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. So yeah, please follow, check us out. If you have any suggestions for videos, we always like suggestions because we're always coming up with new ideas and stuff like that. So that really helps.
So everybody take note of how to spell Duce. His version is lacking an E, just D-U-C-E.
Yes.
What's up with that?
That's a good question. It was just always that way. And it is different. And it's really come in handy when we're trying to get like Duce's Wild, BBQ.com and stuff like that, because it's spelled uniquely. It was no problem. There's been a couple instances where it works out for me.
Very good.
But Duce has been a very helpful nickname in general. I have the same name as my dad. I'm Lawrence Paul Raymond II. That's my given name. But God forbid I was Little Larry or Larry Jr. I think Duce is much cooler than that.
Okay, so the second, that's where the Duce comes from.
Yes, that's where the Duce comes from.
There you go.
I thought you meant why is it spelled without an E? Yes, that's the story of why I'm called Duce, is I have the same name as my dad. I'm the second. So been called Duce my whole entire life.
Right on. Well, why don't we wrap up with what's next for Duce Raymond? If you've got anything you can share.
So
take a nap, maybe?
Yeah. What's next is we're still working. There's a lot of work still on Duce's Wild. The catering business is continuing to grow. I really, like I mentioned before, we've put an awesome team together and the managers are doing a great job running the day-to-day on that operation. So we're going to continue to hopefully see growth in the catering business. Duce's Wild, Dave and I have a business partner, my brother-in-law, Brian, with Duce's Wild. We're still working on getting that, to the next level. We're selling some online, selling to some of the local stores and stuff like that, but we want to take it to the next level. So we're working, on our way with that. And then, eventually I want to have a Duce's Wild restaurant. So I don't know if I've told you guys if we still have time, but Sweet Baby Ray's is kind of, I have a finite amount of time to use that brand. The way that deal worked out with Ken's is Dave has to be 50% owner, or my dad, and my dad's passed, and I will try to get Dave to live as long as possible, but I know nobody does. So once that happens, then I have to transition into Duce's Wild or whatever brand that we want. But that just makes sense. One of the reasons why we've leaned into Duce's Wild is because that's coming down the pipe at some point too. So eventually have a Duce's Wild restaurant and try to maintain, but it's really the focus on keeping the business we have going for the catering and then Duce's Wild.
Very cool. Well, Duce, I've really enjoyed learning a lot more than I ever knew about the Sweet Baby Ray's legacy, and it's just so inspirational to see what you've done with it. So I really want to thank you for sharing all your stories and wisdom with us tonight. Thank you to everybody that tuned in tonight. It's been a great turnout, and hope you learned a lot. If you didn't learn enough, you know where to go. At Duce Raymond on all the socials, and next thing you know, you too will be a barbecue boss.
Awesome.
Thank you, Duce.
Thank you, guys. This is great.
Thanks so much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night,
See you
everyone.
on the next edition of Flavor Talk.
Right on. Take care. Good night.